Welcome to Bedtime Horror, your portal to scary stories. Back when I was in middle school, my friend Sarah invited a few of us over for a sleepover at her place. Her parents were out of town for the weekend, so we were looking forward to some late-night fun. We had the whole evening planned with games, snacks, and even a scary movie marathon. As soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, we began our sleepover adventure. We kicked things off with a game of hide-and-seek in the dark. The excitement was building as we roamed around the house, whispering and giggling. But as the evening wore on, something started to feel off. We noticed the neighbor, Mr. Johnson, acting rather strangely. He lived in the house next door, and his curtains were partially drawn. From our vantage point, we could see him peering through the gap in the curtains, watching us intently. At first, we brushed it off as just our imagination playing tricks on us. I mean, what could Mr. Johnson possibly want from a bunch of middle school kids having a sleepover, right? We continued with our games and snacks, but the uneasy feeling lingered. I suggested we take a closer look. We moved closer to the window, trying to see what Mr. Johnson was up to. The sight was eerie. He was still there, staring at us with an intensity that sent shivers down our spines. We realized it wasn't just paranoia, something was definitely wrong. We decided to investigate further, creeping out into the yard to see if we could spot any signs of suspicious activity. It was like something out of a mystery novel. We noticed some unusual footprints near Mr. Johnson's back door, and the pieces began to fall into place. We did some research online and discovered that there had been a string of thefts in our neighborhood recently. The stolen items included bikes, electronics, and even some jewelry. The culprit was still at large, and we couldn't help but connect the dots. Fearful for our safety and wanting to put an end to the thefts, we decided to take action. With the help of Sarah's older brother, who was home from college, we hatched a plan to catch Mr. Johnson in the act. As the night wore on, we kept a close eye on him while pretending to enjoy our sleepover. We knew we had to be patient and wait for the right moment to act. Little did we know that this night was about to take an unexpected turn that would leave us forever changed. The hours ticked away, and the tension in the room grew thicker. We had our eyes trained on Mr. Johnson, who continued to watch us from next door. It was a nerve-wracking game of cat and mouse, but we were determined to see it through. Around midnight, just when we were starting to wonder if we were wrong about him, we saw something that sent alarm bells ringing in our heads. Mr. Johnson slipped out of his house, wearing dark clothes and carrying a large backpack. It was clear he was up to something sinister. Sarah's brother, who was a strapping college athlete, quietly grabbed his cell phone and dialed 911. He discreetly informed the police about Mr. Johnson's suspicious behavior and the ongoing thefts in the neighborhood. We knew we couldn't confront Mr. Johnson on our own. This was a job for the authorities. As we waited for the police to arrive, fear gnawed at our insides. What if he discovered that we were onto him? What if he turned violent? But we couldn't back down now. We had to see this through. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually, the flashing lights of a police car illuminated the night. Officers approached Mr. Johnson, who appeared startled and nervous. They questioned him about his activities, and we could see him struggling to come up with an explanation. As the police conducted a search, they found a stash of stolen goods in his backpack, including electronics, jewelry, and even a few wallets. Our suspicions had been confirmed, and we couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph mixed with relief. Mr. Johnson was taken into custody, and the stolen items were returned to their rightful owners in our neighborhood. It turned out he had been committing these thefts for a while, taking advantage of our unsuspecting community. Our sleepover had turned into an unforgettable night of suspense and action. We had played a part in bringing a criminal to justice, and that experience brought us closer together as friends. The incident also taught us to trust our instincts and be vigilant, no matter how ordinary a situation may seem. Looking back, it was a night we'd never forget, one that turned a regular sleepover into an adventure filled with suspense and unexpected twists. When I was younger, a sleepover in the garden felt like a grand adventure. One summer evening, a few of my closest friends and I decided to do just that. We had it all planned out, a cozy tent, delicious snacks, and a bundle of ghost stories to tell under the stars. As night fell and the moon cast its silvery glow, we crawled into our tent, excited but a little jittery. It must have been around midnight when we started hearing those faint whispers.
Jake. Mike.
At first, we brushed them off as tricks of the wind rustling through the trees behind my house. It was only when those whispers grew louder, forming words we could almost understand, that we began to worry. We turned off our flashlights, huddled together in the dark, and strained our ears.
Jake. Mike.
It sounded like someone was calling our names, just barely audible but undeniably there. Our hearts raced, and fear gripped us. Then, things took a chilling turn. The whispers drew nearer, and we could hear the sound of twigs snapping and leaves crunching underfoot. Our tent, shrouded in darkness, seemed to vibrate with tension as the eerie presence drew closer. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged just outside our tent, casting a long, unsettling silhouette against the fabric. We dared not breathe, frozen in terror as we watched. The figure lingered there, its presence suffocating, before gradually retreating back into the woods. Our night had become a living nightmare. We didn't sleep a wink, and with the first light of dawn, we hastily packed up and fled indoors. The morning sun rose, casting a warm glow over our garden, but its comforting rays couldn't erase the unease that had settled in our hearts. We were determined to uncover the truth behind the spine-chilling events of the previous night. With the daylight on our side, we gathered our courage and ventured back to the scene. As we approached the woods, the remnants of our midnight ordeal became evident. Crushed twigs and disturbed leaves marked a path that led deeper into the forest. It was as if someone had left behind a trail intentionally. Following the trail, we discovered faint footprints that were clearly not ours. The footsteps led us to a nearby hiking trail that was frequently used by nature enthusiasts and wanderers. We reported our eerie encounter to the local police, sharing every detail we could recall. Their investigation took them along the same path we had followed. It wasn't long before they made a significant discovery. In a hidden corner of the woods, they found a makeshift campsite. It was clear that someone had been living here. The police searched the area and came across a man in a state of disarray, his eyes filled with confusion and distress. He was disoriented and seemed to be suffering from a mental health crisis. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The man we had encountered during our sleepover had been wandering the woods, tormented by his own inner demons. He wasn't a sinister figure or malevolent presence. He was someone in desperate need of help. The police called for medical assistance, and the man was taken to a nearby hospital for evaluation and treatment. It was a relief to know that he would receive the care he needed. As for us, the whispers from the woods had ceased, leaving us with a sense of closure and relief. Though the night had been harrowing, it taught us the importance of compassion and understanding. Sometimes, the most terrifying mysteries are those rooted in the human psyche, and they can be resolved with kindness and empathy. Our sleepover adventure became a tale we shared with a mixture of fear and sympathy, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there can be a glimmer of humanity and hope. It was a typical Friday night, and my friends and I had decided to have a sleepover at my house while my parents were away. We were eager for a night filled with games, snacks, and ghost stories, the perfect recipe for adventure and fun. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the room, we decided it was time to set up our makeshift beds in the living room. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of excitement and a tinge of nervousness. After all, the best sleepovers always had an element of thrill to them. We had just settled into our cozy sleeping bags when my phone rang. I grabbed it, expecting it to be one of our other friends wanting to join in on the fun. But when I looked at the caller ID, it simply displayed unknown. Curiosity piqued, I answered the call. At first, there was nothing but silence on the other end. I exchanged puzzled glances with my friends, wondering who could be calling from an unknown number at this hour. Then, the voice on the other end finally spoke, a low and raspy whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "I know your deepest fears," the voice hissed, sending a chill through the room. "I know all your secrets." My heart pounded as a wave of fear washed over us. It felt like the room had grown colder, even though the thermostat hadn't changed. We tried to dismiss it as a prank, but the caller's threats became more sinister with each passing moment. "They're watching you," the voice continued. "They know what you're doing right now." We glanced nervously around the room, trying to see if anyone was playing a trick on us. But there was no one else in the room, and all the windows were tightly shut. The voice on the phone grew increasingly disturbing as it delved into details about our lives that no stranger should know. It was as if this unknown caller had access to our innermost thoughts and fears. We huddled closer together, our faces pale with dread. Who could be behind this twisted game? And how could they possibly know so much about us? These were the questions that raced through our minds as the night wore on, and the sinister calls continued. As the night deepened, the caller's threats escalated, leaving us feeling more vulnerable than ever. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, even though the windows were securely locked and the doors remained bolted. The voice on the other end of the line seemed to revel in our fear, describing our deepest fears and secrets in disturbing detail. We couldn't imagine how anyone could have such intimate knowledge of our lives. One by one, we took turns talking to the caller, desperately trying to discern any clues about their identity. But the voice remained elusive, offering no hints as to who they were or why they were tormenting us. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to set in. Our initial excitement had been replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. We were determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, but our energy was waning. Then, a glimmer of hope emerged. As the caller continued to speak, we heard a faint voice in the background, a voice we recognized. It was Jake's mother, who lived next door to me. In that moment, realization struck like lightning. We had suspected Jake all along, but this was the confirmation we needed. Jake's mother's voice in the background was unmistakable. With newfound determination, we confronted Jake, but when we pointed out that we had recognized his mother's voice, he couldn't keep up the act any longer. With a sheepish grin, he confessed to the elaborate prank he had pulled on us. He had used his mother's phone to make the calls, exploiting our fears and secrets for his amusement. Relieved that the threat was finally over, we couldn't help but be impressed by Jake's dedication to the prank. He had fooled us completely, and we had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. While we were initially angry, we couldn't stay mad for long. After all, it had been a night we would never forget, and the adrenaline rush of the mystery had made our sleepover one for the books. With the caller's identity revealed, we settled back into our sleeping bags, relieved that the sinister voice on the other end of the phone was nothing more than a mischievous friend playing a prank.